We're going to call this day 4, even though it's not. And what I've found so far is the tilt steering column. The adjustment is actually for the arm, I think. It doesn't actually adjust any tilt of the actual column. So my tilt is still much higher at its lower setting than what my stock straight column was. And if that's the case, I'm going to remove it, put back the old column. And I remember seeing on a thread somewhere in a forum that you can put washers and take up the space to lower it a little bit, and I may end up doing that. Probably not a significant amount. I'd like to have a lot of threads left where those nuts are connecting. Start out with the shocks, or the struts I should say. Ran into some problems. I have one put together, and I also believe, I don't know if there's a right and a left on these. I don't think there is. I think they're the same part number actually, so it doesn't really matter which side goes on which. I'm almost positive about that. But I had not really any difficulty taking it apart. I used this tool rented from AutoZone, but when I went to put it back together to try to compress it, the problem was with this tool is that it goes a lot on the inside, and it'll shift too, and they'll end up shifting towards one another, and it's not a very safe tool either, in addition to that. But the issue was it was contacting this shock tower that prevents dirt and other garbage from getting on the push rod of the shock or strut. And because of that, I was either going to crush this thing or scratch it up, mar it, something. And so this just was not going to work for me. So what I ended up having to do was I ended up finding this. I found this at O'Reilly's, and it was actually cheaper at O'Reilly's than it was anywhere else. I looked up on Amazon. Amazon wanted, I think, like $43 or something, plus I would have had to wait for it to get in the mail. O'Reilly's had it for $34.95, and I haven't checked the Shop Savvy app with this barcode. I will, and see if I can find one cheaper. And I couldn't even actually find this on Shop Savvy when I put in this number right here for performance tool. And I like it very much, and I didn't spend too much time messing around with this thing, and you can see just by looking at it that very little intrusion inside the spring, and it's extremely safe. I added and it's a lot bigger than you would think too. It looks small in the picture. I added some locking washers and washers to it, so I had some from Harbor Freight, and it just made me feel a little bit better than those coming back off, or backing off. And the other issue I ended up having was, one, remembering how it went back together. You've got a little indentation down here, and that's where the end of the coil spring sits. And the other problem I had was this polyurethane. It keeps popping out. You put these in there and they do not stay. They will continue to just keep popping out. So I had to compress this coil spring a lot. And you also want to grab it at the highest coil, the most coils apart on that tool. It even says that in the directions. And then I compressed it, shoved this thing on here. One of these comes out of the top, one of these comes out of the bottom. So they don't butt up against one another. Right here there's a piece of metal that separates the two. I have a mosquito tearing me up again. So finally got this thing back together, and the washer is up like this. there is another black washer on top of this shock tower, and I think that's it as far as the hardware on this thing. And I kept all the bolts. There's bound to be a bolt in one of those from the other parts I had taken out of the junkyard. I saved everything, so you can see the difference in the shocks. So I cannot use the lower control arm off of the 88, even though it's lighter, and I don't think I'd want to. So that would bring me to my next issue. One other thing I failed to mention was when I compressed this spring, I forgot this nut would not back off unless there was tension on this spring. And so I had to put tension back on it, and not realizing there's an Allen head key here that you have to stick an Allen head through, and then you can undo this by keeping this from turning. But if you put tension on it, it does the same thing. You have to keep letting it out. And then to turn this one, I needed a midget wrench, a 5mm, and luckily I had just picked these up because my wrenches only go down to 6. But I had bought another tool kit, and so you're going to need that for these GR2s anyway. It may be different, it may be another Allen head wrench for something else. So that is, I think, everything you need to know about the strut replacement. Now for the issue of getting this out. I have went into just about every tool I thought was going to be beneficial. And this one is 27023 ball joint U-joint presser. And what is beneficial out of here is these collars in the middle. I believe you have 3, but maybe only, no, you do have 3. Alright, so put these all back. So the first one, damn, has a good nick on it. So I'm going to flip that over. The first one, I believe, is just the right diameter to go over this, hold it hopefully, and allow it to be pushed out the other side. Because this thing is not flat by any standards, and it's hard to get anything underneath it to hold it. I was getting ready to go buy some metal because I just went and bought that cutoff from Harbor Freight, and I don't know what item number it is, but it's the 3.5 horsepower. I don't feel like a little bit looking at it, but I gotta go back and buy a blade. And I'm going to have to go buy some metal too, which I actually do have metal down there, that big long strip right there. It's 10 feet long, and I can't remember what the thickness of it is, or the width, but that was going to be the setup I was going to use for putting Integra seats in the HF CRX. That got to be more than I anticipated. I didn't want to do a pan swap. So I have seen online of people, pressing out the center, burning it out, and then cutting a couple of slices, 2-3 slices into it, and then using a punch or a chisel to take out part of it. But I don't want to mar this thing up. I spent $200. I actually spent $150, but it's a $200 20-ton shop press. I should be able to use it, and it's made specifically for this kind of application. So I'm going to try this one more time before I end up applying other methods. But I think if you take this one and you take the second one, so first one allows it to sit level, and this, it's not really level right here with this, but all this is doing is just holding up so that once I put the press on there, it should, hold up on its own. I believe this is a 27mm. It is 27mm socket, 1/2 inch drive, Craftsman, and I think this is just the right size, hopefully, to press this out. Now, in order to be even safer, I'm going to grab this one and I'm going to put it around it so that if it shatters, hopefully it shatters away from my thoracic. Oh, and this was out of another set. I was actually going to put this one in there first. So it's going to be that one, then that one. So double safety. The other tools that I rented was part number 27164. Getting a form of dyslexia going on. And that was where this middle piece just came from. It came from here. I believe this is the Honda, good God, Honda adapter set for the ball joints. Yeah, because that's the other ball joint. And then I rented this one, 27137. Yeah, 27137. I thought I could maybe use that. It's not looking like it, but I may be able to use it for something else, so I'm going to hang on to it. These tools are not cheap either to rent. I think the ball joints, the 2 sets of ball joints were like $240, and I think this one was $50 or $60, and this one was $50 or $60. One of them was $50 and one of them was $60. 27119. I don't think I'm going to be able to use these either. These seem to be soft aluminum. So, plus they're tapered. I could use maybe this side of it if it's the right size to press it out. But again, it's soft, and I may end up destroying it, so I'll have to look up what kind of application bearing and race installer is. I would have thought you'd be able to put a lot of pressure on that. And then I went to Walmart, and at Walmart I picked up some Scotch-Brite, some stainless steel, like Brillo pads, and then some PB Blaster. And PB Blaster to try to break up the rust. And I also have a torch that I'm going to heat up this part. Not insanely hot, but just maybe, I don't know, 150 degrees or something. Not too terribly much, but something just to expand it. Maybe even expand it, let it cool, expand it, and help unseize the part. Once you can get that initial break, it'll be pretty straightforward. I'm just afraid that this is going to go in and it's not going to be centered. So hopefully I'm going to get some results out of this today. If not, if this setup here doesn't work, I'm going to have to use metal, pieces of metal, slabs, and somehow make it level on the press. So, and technically, we're just going to call this day 4. That's going to be the conclusion for now.